Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 2 for this news report today. It's Thursday, December 13th, 2012. My website is ggnonline.com, and on YouTube my channels are ddarko2012 and ddarko2013. Americans are the most spied on people in world history, more spying on citizens than the Stasi of East Germany. In a radio interview, Wall Street Journal reporter Julia Angwin, who has been one of the best covering of the surveillance state in the U.S., made a simple observation that puts much of this into context. The U.S. surveillance regime has more data on the average American than the Stasi ever did on East Germans. It says, the government is collecting and storing virtually every phone call, purchase, email, text message, internet searches, social media communications like Facebook and Twitter, health information, employment history, travel and student records, and virtually all other information on every American. Says they claim also that the government is also using facial recognition software and surveillance cameras to track where everyone is going. Moreover, cell towers track where your phone is at for GPS. And it goes on and it says, American government is collecting some 100 billion 1,000 character emails per day and 20 trillion communications of all types per year. He also says that the government has collected all the communications of congressional leaders, generals, and everyone else in the U.S. for the last 10 years. That's what I was just talking about with General Petraeus, saying that if you become a target in the surveillance state, you'll kind of get sucked up in there like Petraeus did. National Counterterrorism Center to examine government files of U.S. citizens for possible criminal behavior. This is from the Wall Street Journal. It says top U.S. intelligence officials gathered in the White House Situation Room to debate a controversial proposal in which counterterrorism officials wanted to create a government dragnet sweeping up millions of records about U.S. citizens, even people suspected of no crime. It says Attorney General signed the changes into effect a week later, and through a FOIA request, the Wall Street Journal reconstructed this clash between these officials over the program. The rules now allow the little-known National Counterterrorism Center to examine the government files of U.S. citizens for criminal behavior, even if there's no reason to suspect them. It says this is a departure from a past practice which barred the agency from storing information about ordinary Americans unless a person was a terror suspect or related to investigation. So that was probably already happening, but this is just letting you know publicly that this is going on. The NCTC can copy entire government databases, including flight records, casino employee lists, the names of America's hosting foreign exchange students, and many others. This says they have new authority to keep data on innocent U.S. civilians, for up to 5 years, and to analyze it for suspicious patterns of behavior. Says the changes also allows databases of U.S. civilian information to be given to foreign governments for analysis of their own. In effect, U.S. and foreign governments would be using information to look for clues that people might commit future crimes. Obama gives okay for black box data recorders to be installed in cars. So, most cars, I believe it's since 1996, have had these little tracker boxes in there. So. But they're saying, September 2014, all car and light trucks will be equipped with these EDRs that will silently record the actions of drivers and the responses to their vehicles, including the vehicle's speed and that. They claim the EDRs do not collect any personal identifying information or record conversations and do not run continuously. So you go ahead and believe that if you want. The next up we have study says Virginia loses toll money from unreadable license plates. And they say they're losing $65,000. That's it. I mean, when you consider, millions of millions of dollars and trillions of dollars in debt, I don't know how much 65,000 of a loss is going to basically allow these RFID chips to be put in there. So this is going to justify it. It says learning that license plate manufacturers are developing barcodes for plates that could improve their readability by toll cameras. Another possibility is to use a radio frequency identification transponders that will be embedded into the license plates. This is like the passport. It's probably already in your plates, just like your license, which are basically national IDs. Then you have the NTSB ignition locks for all drunk drivers. The board says a change could save lives. So just save $65,000. It could reduce these 32,000 traffic deaths a year. So they say here that they want to speed up research and efforts with automakers to develop systems that can determine a driver's blood alcohol concentration using infrared light. When the driver presses an ignition button, the vehicle won't start if the alcohol concentration is too high. Most of you have already seen the video or heard of the news about police having technology to be able to shut down your car remotely. So this is a similar type thing. And, you know, I've actually got rear-ended by a drunk driver on the highway before, so I'm not like, you know, for traffic deaths due to drunk driving, but I'm for personal responsibility. And this treats people the way they already act, which is like good slaves who don't think for themselves or take personal responsibility. So if, you know, in the event you don't have the right blood type, or you don't have enough credits, or you're a victim of the usury system, and for whatever reason you can't make your payments, now all of a sudden you can't start your car to go to work and try to find some kind of job or income. I remember seeing a story about the baseball player Carlton Fisk. He was actually arrested and got a DUI for doing what? For driving while he was drunk? No, he was actually sleeping it off in like a cornfield or something like that in his truck. They found the bottle, whatever, on the floor there, but he wasn't driving, right? So if he decided to pull over and sleep it off, they still gave him with a ticket. So let's say you pop on this and it shuts down, then technically the police can come and give you, take away your license and give you thousands of dollars of fine. It's a big revenue maker there. Speeding drivers on the M25 in the UK escape without tickets because new network of digital cameras is not switched on. Remember, the cameras are not switched on, so you think the cameras are switched off, right? It goes on and it says that when these cameras were installed, they failed to catch a single speeding driver. They said it was yet to receive statutory authority to use the new cameras. So it may not be that they're going on here talking about technical difficulties, right, in quotes. The technical difficulties is that it's not probably legal, that they haven't passed some statute that they have to do. So these cameras probably are working for surveillance. They're just not able to ticket people yet. But it says temporary average cameras monitoring stretches of roadworks along the motorway are understood to be working. Cell phone applications are spying on children by giving advertisers their phone numbers and their exact locations. The U.S. government is investigating whether software companies that make the cell phone apps have violated privacy rights of children by quietly collecting personal information from phones and sharing with advertisers and data brokers. It actually goes in there and talks about how they can pinpoint their exact location. Well, with the towers, it's already GPS, so they can already do that. It says the report said mobile apps can siphon data to invisible and unknown third parties that could be used to develop a detailed profile of the child without the parent's knowledge or consent. That's engineered consent. I've covered that before. Samsung Firmware Flaw allows smart TVs to watch you. It says the company that made the headlines in October for publicizing zero-day holes in these products now says that it uncovered a remotely exploitable security hole in their smart TVs. If left unpatched, a vulnerability would allow hackers to make off with owners' social media credentials and even to spy on those watching the TV using compatible video cameras and microphones. I like how they call it a flaw. Tweeters could be military targets. Social media users who use tweets and online posts to comment on military operations could be regarded as legitimate military targets. They said on Thursday, the Australian Army Land Warfare Study said recent social media war between Israel and Hamas raised complex ethical questions about who is a combatant and therefore a legitimate military target. Interesting, because most of the foreigners, foreign terrorists that are inside Syria carrying out the West and the globalist agenda, they're using this social media that was, of course, at least funneled and created by the government and by the CIA. And that says if this is the case, this might mean that those using social media in support of military operations are now legitimate targets. Also, it says that if social media operators or users engage in conflict by uploading, downloading, or sharing or otherwise adding to content in any way, then they become actors contributing to hostilities. That's interesting because, you know, it's not like they're going to be going after the Syrian rebels that are using all this technology, but what about people that start tweeting that are against Israeli or Zionist globalist policies? Would they become military targets? I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't. I just covered this before about how the U.S. military is starting to target children for assassination in battle zones. American military starts assassinating children. It says here in this Military Times article, they actually changed the headline, which was very blunt about how they're able to bomb children now because they're legitimate targets. They changed the whole article up. You can go in there and see how they changed it. The U.S. military says that children are legitimate targets in the war in Afghanistan because sometimes the Taliban and other insurgents use kids. I remember militants can be the ages between 13 and 21 and male, so The very broad definition. Special Operations Command leads the propaganda fight. Military Special Operations Command has become an emerging player in the Pentagon's disinformation propaganda efforts to confront violent extremists around the world, according to documents obtained from a report from a think tank. So this is good PR, public relations to put out there. And they start off with the fake raid of Osama bin Laden, of a dead man, to lay the groundwork, saying they were at the head of that. Key to his propaganda efforts is a collection of websites known as the Trans-Regional Web Initiative, aimed at foreign audiences. There was a report released in USA Today titled "The Pentagon as Pitchman: Perception and Reality of Public Diplomacy." It says the military's growing role in shaping perceptions about the United States around the world. They've actually bolstered his propaganda campaign in cyberspace with trained teams of psychological operation troops. It says that they're there to combat VEOs, violent extremist organizations, and resist the spread of their associated ideology. So once deployed, they serve for their local commanders. Now, you may think of, quote, towel heads, Muslims, and screaming Ali Akbar and God is great as they're killing children and stuff like that, and being supported by these same people that are these local commanders, their bosses. They have the same bosses as the terrorists. No, it could be people such as myself or anybody else that start speaking truth. A courtroom at Camp Justice is a censorship chamber. Goes on and says the chief of the Guantanamo War Court has approved the use of a time delay on the public viewing of the September 11th death penalty trial, as well as a censor in the court to make sure that nobody divulges details of a now defunct CIA interrogation program, citing national security interest. It says it's a 40-second delay. It eventually or effectively prevents the public from learning anything about what the CIA did with the alleged terrorists before the 2006 transfer to Guantanamo Bay. I love that now defunct CIA interrogation. In other words, they don't do it anymore, right? CIA tortured and sodomized terror suspect, Human Rights Court rules. Landmark European Court of Human Rights judge says CIA tortured wrongly detained German citizen. It is the first time the court has described CIA treatment meted out to terror suspects as torture. Next up, electroshock torture handcuffs are now patented. Delivers shocking torture, gas injections, and chemical restraints to prisoners via remote control. By prison guards, cops, or MPs to deliver stronger or weaker electroshots as desired. A head teacher threatened to feed pupils bread and water unless parents pay school meals debt. So again, why do you even send them there to the re-education camps? A teacher asked students to pen suicide notes. Says there are French teachers in hot water after giving teenage students a twisted assignment to write a suicide note. She set quite the detailed scene for 13, 14-year-olds. So this isn't the first time this actually happened in America, I think, too. You've just turned 18, decided to end your life, and in a final impetus, you decide to give the reasons for your gesture. You will describe all the disgust you feel towards yourself. Your text will retrace several events at their origin of this feeling. So that was the instruction. The UN conference slyly introduces resolution to gain control of the internet in the middle of the night. At the UN conference in Dubai, the presiding chairman of the International Telecommunications Union Conference surveyed the assembled countries to see whether there was an interest in having greater involvement in the UN governing the internet. A majority of the countries gave their approval. With sufficient majority supporting the UN becoming more actively in controlling the internet, the chairman put forth a resolution. The chairman, though, insisted the survey was not a vote. Well, of course, it's not really democracy, so. The U.S. internet speed is a joke. Says the lack of fiber optic upgrade plan is embarrassing. The real threat to U.S. internet isn't foreign invention. It says here is that it currently sucks. Cable companies have kept access limited, expensive, and relatively slow by global standards. It says roughly a third of Americans don't have broadband access. And it says for about 19 million who live in rural areas, it's not available at any price because cable companies refuse to expand there. Yet we're moving in the opposite direction. It says with telecom companies focusing on wireless and refusing government subsidies to service rural areas. It's crazy. This is exactly what I've mentioned before. Everyone in America should be able to get fast internet for and cable, whatever, basic cable for $30 a month. And if private companies won't step up, the government should. Well, I don't believe in that. But like I said, regular internet should be $30 a month, flat rate. It's really not much more. But it says here that cable companies face no real competition or pricing pressures. And you know me, I can't stand these damn Wi-Fi towers everywhere. They're about a mile apart from everywhere. It says we have no national plan to switch to fiber optic cables. It's embarrassing that one of the most innovative nations in the world can't do this. This is GGN, and I'm Darko. Thank you.